Hello and welcome to everyone listening to the Written in Melanin podcast, the place where you come to get your weekly dose of melanated creativity. I'm your host, CM Lockhart, an author of fantasy books featuring Black girls who aren't all that nice, and the owner of the Melanin Library, an online database of books written by Black authors. And in this space, I share with you everything I've learned on my journey as a Black and indie author. I'm glad that you're here. And today, you guys, we have Julian Winters on the podcast with us. He is the author of the IBPA Benjamin Franklin Gold Award winning Running with Lions, the Georgia Peach Award nominated Right Where I Left You, Junior Library Guild Selections How to Be Remy Cameron, The Summer of Everything, and As You Walk On By, as well as the upcoming Prince of the Palisades. A self-proclaimed comic book geek, Julian currently lives outside of Atlanta, where he can be found swooning over rom-coms or watching the only two sports he can follow, volleyball and soccer. And he's on the podcast, and I'm excited. Welcome to the podcast, Julian.
Thank you so much. I am beyond, and I mean like beyond excited to be here and have this conversation with you. I feel like I'm having a really geeky moment.
I'm so glad. I'm glad. Well, we can be geeky nerds together, because even though I am not a comic nerd, right? But I am very much an anime person. So when you said volleyball, I immediately thought, oh, Haikyuu, I can follow that too.
Yes. Yeah. Oh no, don't get twisted. I am like geeky on all levels. So I am very much an anime person too.
See, me and you, we're gonna get along. We're gonna get along great. But for the people who are unfamiliar with you and your work, in your own words, how would you describe yourself? Please introduce yourself to our listeners.
Yeah, hi everyone. I am Julian Winters. I have, up until now, mostly written young adult fiction that it's contemporary fiction that centers queer joy, it centers Black joy, it centers having characters that are BIPOC and that are queer, really getting to celebrate who they are and the joy and love that they automatically deserve. Not the things that they should have to earn, but these are things that they should deserve from the get-go. And so, yeah, I've had 5 published novels so far. Prince of the Palisades will be my 6th novel out.
Impressive. And you also did a cover reveal for your first adult rom-com recently as well. I Think They Love You.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that was, the response from that was incredible. Being a queer and Black creative, it's always, I feel like I'm always towing that space of, are people really going to be as excited about my work as they are of my colleagues who are non-BIPOC or who are not queer? And the response from that was incredible. So I'm super excited.
I'm excited about it too, and that is definitely something that I would love to talk to you more about, just, you know, being in the space and navigating it, because on the podcast, you know, we talk a lot about just being, you know, Black and an author and what that means, especially when you are writing Black characters. But, you know, intersectionality does exist, and it's just one of those things that I feel like need to be also talked about, and conversations need to be had, you know? Yeah. So I was going to like ease you into these questions, but since we're already here.
Oh no, what have I done?
But I want to talk about it because, like I said, there's been conversations going around that, you know, you have to, as a Black author, essentially either write white stories or write for a white audience in order to be successful. And as you said, that you're not doing that. You're writing Black and queer stories, specifically Black and queer love stories, and you're getting an amazing response to it. So I guess, what's your take on that piece of advice, I'll say, that you have to essentially write white to be successful? And, you know, how has not doing that kind of affected your publishing journey? I was going to slow you into this, but you kind of just jumped 10 toes deep. So
listen, I am so glad I spent that summer as a kid pretending to be a lifeguard and learning how to swim, because I am in deep now. Honestly, looking back on my publishing journey, if I go all the way back to before my first novel, Running with Lions, came out, I honestly felt that way, where my first novel is not a Black main character, is a white main character. And no one at my publisher at that time made me feel like I had to write the story. I felt like the industry as a whole made me feel like I had to write a certain type of story or certain type of characters to appeal to that audience. And after that first book came out, I just sat down with myself and said, great book. I love that book wholeheartedly. Still one of my favorite books. I still love that I wrote Sebastian the way that he is, because the story that he told, I didn't want to, like we were talking about intersectional, I didn't really want to look at that from being a Black and queer person in the sports space, especially in the soccer space. So I'm really happy with that book. But I felt that deep, and I was like, my next book, I want to be so true to myself and so true to stories that I didn't get growing up. And so when I wrote How to Be Remy Cameron, I was unapologetic about this being a Black and queer character and me telling his journey into discovering who he is outside of what everyone else has labeled him as. And so what I have to tell authors coming up, or authors who are currently doing it, is I don't feel like we have to change any piece of ourselves or any piece of the story that's living inside of us to fit any particular audience. You write a great story, you create these amazing characters, and the readers will come. It's not about what that character is, identity-wise. It's about you telling an amazing story. And that's what you want at the end of the day. If we can relate to the stories written by white authors or white writers, then the same works the other way. Other people can feel our story on that very deep level.
Agreed. 100%. And I'm glad that you said that, because it's one of those things that, always comes up in conversations, right? It's just like, so many of us as adults have grown up, reading books with primarily white characters and connecting to them. And there's the conversation of, it's not impossible. It's just you have to go into it understanding that this character is different from you, but that doesn't make them wrong. That doesn't make their story unrelatable. That doesn't change anything about the story itself. It's just how you approach it, and whether or not you approach it with an open mind or not, and going into it willing to understand the character, or versus judging them for basically being not like us, right?
100%.
I'm glad that you said it. And I guess that's also something else that, if you don't mind talking about it, I would like to know more about, because, you talked about, or you mentioned rather, wanting to be true to your identity with your second book. Do you think that things would have changed had you not written your first book the way that you did? Because it's not about it being good, right? Obviously you have the talent, the skill, and the story to tell. I'm just wondering from, publishing standpoint, I guess, do you think that it affected your career in any way?
I'm being 100% honest. I don't know. I think if I had led with my second book, How to Be Remy Cameron, I still would have gotten that. That book it still does get a lot of critical acclaim from people. Reviewers loved it. It was so well loved for the story that it was. I don't know if that was a book to begin my publishing career with. I think Run of Lions very much hits, it is like the soccer version of Haikyuu, so it hits those really like niche points, those like that particular crowd that really is looking for something, the hunger for something in romance and sports and stuff like that. I think it was a great book to lead off with. It's still probably my best-selling book, and people adored it. So I think Remy wasn't a book to lead off with, but I think Remy was the book that I chose to write to make people see me as a writer versus me as a storyteller.
That makes sense. And I'm really glad that you worded it that way, because sometimes I feel like as authors, I don't know, let me not put words in anybody else's mouth, and let me be completely transparent, as I always am, right? I feel like there should be more conversation about how, as an author, when you have a career, like, you grow, and books come at certain times, and they need to be released and shared at certain times with certain people, and they open doors and they build off of each other. Because when you start talking about a career, it's like, you build a backlist. Like, hopefully your first book isn't your last book, but also it's just like, some books, I'm not gonna say they're in the way, because that's not how I feel, but some books, sometimes you have to write the books in order that they come to you. And I'm really glad that you also mentioned that it's about skill. That I think the crux of this conversation when it comes to like appealing to a white audience. For a lot of people, you know, if this ruffles your feathers, I'm so sorry, but it's also like, are you actually writing a good book that people can connect to and don't just have to have some inherent, oh, I'm getting this because of something completely unrelated to the book, and I'm supporting it because of something that's completely unrelated to the content of the book. Not saying that's bad, not saying it's wrong, but it helps if your book is actually good, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I think everyone has a journey to take. And, you know, we all have a destination in mind, and how you get there is how you get there. But I definitely 100% feel like, you know, at the end of the day are you telling a great story? Are you putting out, you know, something that is remarkable or memorable, or something that's going to have an impact? For Running with Lions, that was my one goal. I published that book with a small independent press. I wasn't with a big five. I didn't even have an agent. And my goal, I told my editor at the time, is I just want to reach 5 queer kids who have never had a chance to see themselves in a story, who've never had the chance to see themselves thrive, be successful, you know, have joy and happiness, fall in love, or just feel the support from the communities. And that's all I wanted. And I think that's what powered me to write the story that I wrote, is having that in mind versus having in mind that, oh, I just want to make sure that I write a book that really hits this audience over here, and that will be my gateway to X, Y, Z, and whatnot. And I don't think that's what books are. That's not what books do for me. I don't pick up a book from a great author and say to myself, oh my gosh, they're my new favorite because they did this and that. It's because when I closed that book, when I hit the end, I felt something deep in my core that I hadn't felt while reading someone else's book. And that for me is more important than, you know, the other thing.
I like you. I like you because I agree 100%. And it's one of the things that I harp on a lot. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, as an author, I think there is importance to understanding where you're going, where you're trying to go, understanding the journey that you're trying to be on. There is benefit to that, and I'm not saying to disregard it, but I think sometimes it gets kind of lost in the sauce that like you started this because you felt something when you read someone else's book, and that's the purpose of writing books, is to write stories that you yourself love and resonate with and are proud of and enjoy and want other people to read, so that, you know, when you are further down your journey and further along in your career, you can, just like you said, you're about to put out your 6th book and you're still like, I love that first book. Like, I'm still really glad that it exists. And I think being able to say that is really impactful and meaningful, you know?
No, I'm actually glad that you said that part about remembering why we write, because I have to stop every single book. I'm drafting like I think it's like going to be book number 8 right now. And every single book, there comes a point where I have to stop and remind myself, I'm not writing this to a particular audience or a particular thing. I'm writing this because I want the reader to have that feeling I have when I read whatever book. And that to me is such an amazing, important reminder for every writer.
See, you've heard it twice now. You've heard it twice from different people. So if you're listening to this, you have no excuses. You have no excuses. But I do want to talk about, you know, since you said you're drafting, I guess, book 8, books 5 and 6, I guess, that are coming up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have the Prince of Palisades, which is for young adult audience, and then we have I Think They Love You, which is your adult. Is that your adult debut?
It is my adult debut.
Oh, that's exciting. Okay, so I wanted to talk about both of them. One, because as far as, you know, the Prince of Palisades go, right? I know that your young adult books have a lot of nominations and awards behind them. So one, congratulations on all of that, because that's incredible. But 2, I kind of wanted to talk about, one, what the book, specifically The Prince of Palisades, is about, and also kind of the journey behind writing your 5th book, getting it out there, and how that's different from like your first one or your second one. Because I know you mentioned that your first one, you didn't even have an agent when that one came out.
Well, Prince of the Palisades is the story of Prince Jaden, and he is kind of a I would say misunderstood, but the media sees him as a bad boyfriend. And he finally goes viral for being at this party and talking trash about his country's prime minister. And his parents have kind of reached that point where they're fed up with him always being in the headline, and they exile him to America, where he was when the video was recorded, and says that he cannot return to his country until he cleans up his image. And so along the way, JD decides that he is going to go about it the way that most people think it is. If I do X, Y, Z, all of a sudden people will love me, when in actuality, they will not. And on his journey to try to clean up his image, he ends up falling for a boy at his new private school in America, and it changes the way he looks at his own image and how he wants to be presented to the world versus how the world wants him to present himself.
That is a word.
Yeah, listen, this book was a journey for me to really get to the heart of what it's about. Like I said, you would think with every book it gets easier, and it doesn't. Not every book is written the same, unfortunately. If it was, I would be using that cheat code all the time. And this book was different than writing my debut. Writing your debut, as a lot of authors will tell you, is such a magical space, sometimes because you have no pressures. Like, there is nothing to lose when you're writing that book because you already have nothing. That book is what's going to get you an agent or, signed with a publisher or whatever it is going to do for you. And so moving forward to Princess of Palisades, it's gotten harder for me because now I have the extra set of voices of, there's readers out there and they have thoughts and they have opinions, and it can kind of mess with the way you want to tell stories, because then you fall into that trap of, I'm trying to write towards this audience kind of thing. And I felt that at the very beginning of Princess of Palisades, I was like, gosh, this is one of the few, I don't misquote me on this, but I did a lot of research trying to find young adult royal books, and there are a scarce amount from Black, Indigenous, or people of color. And so I felt this other extra added pressure of, I'm writing a Black prince, and there aren't books out there that I can find with a Black queer prince in the contemporary space. I might be able to find it, in fantasy when up, but in the contemporary space, none. And so that added this extra layer of pressure of, oh my gosh, I have to make sure people love Jaden and make sure that, it feels like these other things that have been published before, or these other movies over here. And I got to the point where I was like, no, in actuality, the journey for a Black royal is going to be a whole lot different than it is for a non-Black royal. And I, at one point, just sat there and embraced that. Instead, this is what it means to exist as a person of color in this world, is that they put up these barriers to strip you of the power that you already had. And I had to empower myself as they tell this story. Tell what it's like. Let this boy be messy, let him be imperfect and be a royal, and let him eventually own the power that he has that they don't want him to have. And so it was a hard experience in the beginning, but as I got further along, it was the most, at the end, I felt so proud of the story that I got to tell.
I love that. I love that because it definitely, like you said, it's a magical experience when you're writing your debut without the expectations. But then I guess once it's out there and you're not just a writer, you're an author. You're this is it, fully committed, 10 toes down. It's different, not worse, but different. And it's very easy to get caught up in, I'll say, the imaginary voices of all the people, the thems who are expecting greatness from you, especially if you've already managed to do it once or twice, or in your case, 5 times prior to this. It's the next ones also have to be incredible. So I can only imagine the pressure that comes with that. But, getting to a point where it's just one, accepting that your book is going to be your version of this story. It's not a replica or an imitation of anything that anyone else has already done, or, for lack of a better term, right? Not trying to blackwash something that's already been done and being no, it's a completely different experience, and leaning into that. And I'm really glad that you said that, because I also feel like that's something that authors, especially if you are I don't say new to the space, but if you're not comfortable in the space yet, writing specifically Black stories, just understanding that if you're writing a Black story and it's just like, yes, these stories exist, but they don't exist in the numerous different versions that you can find in other stories. It's totally fine to take something and make it yours and explore it in a way that makes sense for you, as long as you are going about it in a way that feels real and authentic to what it is that you're writing. I think that's the important part, especially if you're having fun and writing stories that you yourself would actually want to read. That's kind of the heart and the crux of actually, I don't say being good at this, because there's a lot to being good at being a writer, but I think at the end of the day, you have to enjoy what you're doing, you know?
So, 100%.
I did want to ask you about, I guess, kind of the journey to your accolades as well, while we're still talking about your young adult novels, because, I mean, obviously we don't know if The Prince of Palisades is going to win anything, not be nominated for anything, but you have a pretty good track record. You got a pretty good track record, I'll just say that, right? So as an author, right, what is that process like? Because I know from the outside, it's like, oh, this author has been nominated for this, or this author's on the shortlist, or they've won, etc. And I know for indie authors, it's really kind of random, right? Like your book gets picked up or nominated by a reader, but in the traditional space, like what is that process like? Because I'm assuming it's not quite as random as when you're an indie author and someone just sends you a DM like, hey, you know you're on this list, right?
Now, listen, that still happened to me. There are so many awards where a teacher or a librarian or someone will DM me and say, hey, did you know you're up for this? And I'm like, no, I had no clue. Thank you for telling me. Let me hop on Canva and make a graphic real quick. Yeah, it's interesting. For my first 3 books were with a small independent publisher, and they would tell me up front, hey, these are the awards that we usually submit our books to. So just be, aware that some of them, Run with Lions, that was my first book and it won an award. They go in and it's fully support. Some of them, I don't know, for indie authors, you may know about this, but some of them you actually have to submit your own work, and some of them you actually have to pay a fee and all these other different things. And that was very interesting for me, because I was like, oh my gosh, I really gotta love this book to pay this kind of money just for it to be considered for an award. We already aren't making any money. Whoa, let me really think about it. That was how it worked then. Now that my last 2 books plus Prince of Palisades are being published by Penguin Random House, it works a little bit differently. They kind of give you a heads up in the beginning that, these are the different awards again that we, usually consider, nominating books to and whatnot. Just this past year, interestingly enough, they do a questionnaire now, and they say, hey, for awards, tell us specifically, how do you identify? How do your characters identify? Do you feel comfortable sharing this information and whatnot? And all these different things that you answer and whatnot. I thought it was the coolest thing, because I've seen the stories and the horror stories, usually not the author's fault, where they get nominated into a category that does not represent their book at all, or does not represent their characters, or doesn't represent who they are as a person. And there's this whole thing. It's like, we don't do that. It's not like as an indie word, there are awards that I could self-submit for. It's typically, publisher-led for me. So I thought it was really cool that I got that questionnaire and got to answer these different things and really break down, hey, these are the things that I would love to be considered for. Also, here are different things that you can take into consideration when nominating me in different spaces. So that's how it works now. I think it's been a really cool experience. But again, we don't fight about these nominations until either the committee puts it out or someone DMs us. It's not like you get this email saying, hey, guess what? It's all kind of random.
But I'm glad that you're willing to talk about it, because there's so much of publishing where on the outside you're just like, how does that work? How did this author, like you said, especially if they're not in the right category, how did this author end up in this category? Like, who did this? Who did this? But it's also really nice to know that it's just like, nope, they're kind of in the same boat as us. They're just here for the ride.
Yeah. People make the traditional publishing space look like you're walking the yellow brick road to Oz or something. In actuality, we're lost in the woods with a pack of marshmallows and a flashlight. It is the same for a lot of different things, It just doesn't look that way, on social media.
I'm dead. He said a pack of marshmallows and a flashlight. Good luck. But no, I mean, that's really good to know because, as I've been doing the podcast and I've been talking to a lot more authors, I feel like some of the smoke and mirrors that has to surround traditional publishing is to keep it feeling like, oh, what's behind the smoke and mirrors? And it's like you said, it's Oz. It's the man behind the curtain. It's just like, it's not as grand as once you know how it works. But I think that's okay. I am very much a proponent of making informed decisions. Like, know what you're getting into, walk into it with your eyes wide open. But that being said, shifting from The Prince of Palisades to I Think They Love You, which is, adult rom-com debut. First of all, I don't know why I'm really excited about this. Like, I just have really good vibes and really good feelings about this for you. So I'm really excited about it. But can we talk about that shift from young adult to adult? Because I know that had to have been a journey, especially when a lot of your backlog is specifically young adults.
Yeah. I'm so glad you asked this question because I am excited to talk to people just about the shift. I don't even want to talk to people about the book. I just want to talk about the journey to writing the book. It was hard. I can see this idea, like the idea came to me back in like 2018, 2019. I sent it out to my agent saying, hey, listen, I've wanted to write adult. Backtracking a bit, my third book, The Summer of Everything, actually was an adult book that I changed to a young adult book because I just felt the story fit better in that space. But I wrote a whole book as an adult book, and it changed the year. So I went to my agent and said, "Hey, it's something I wanted to do for a while. Here's the idea." And I actually feel like I was in a decent enough space to start writing it until I think started drafting in late 2020, early 2021, and it took a year to try to write it, revise pieces with my agent, write it again, revise pieces with my agent, because I had spent so many, and by that time I had written my fifth book, As You Walk On By. So I had written 5 YAs. It took so much effort to remind myself, hey, you're an adult, and you've been an adult for a couple of decades now. Oh, like you can talk like an adult, you can get into that adult headspace, that adult voice. I couldn't do it. I could not do it. My agent, I love her so much, but she had to point out spots where she's like, you can say man here, not boy, right? And I was like, oh my gosh, what am I doing here? I'm in too deep. So it's a journey. My hat's off to the authors that write in multiple age categories, because it is hard to shift sometimes, and reminding yourself that, hey, we're actually adults here. We know how to talk like adults and, do adult things, but man, was it hard.
I can imagine, because I don't shift like that, but on the singular moment, and when I say singular moment, I mean there was like a solid 10 minutes where I thought I was going to do this, and I was just like, you know what? I don't think that I'm built for this. I don't think my mind is ready for this, because it's just the way that you have to tackle things, in like, especially when you are an adult, right? I think it's a little different when you're still very much new adult yourself and you're still in your like early 20s. It's just like, oh yeah, like you still have a very clear grasp of like teenagerdom, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
But then as you migrate further away, it's like, wait a second, was I that immature? Is this what teenagers are doing nowadays? This is odd, and I say that from, I just remember this experience of going back to college and being like, oh, like, I'm not that far removed from college. It's fine. Went back to campus and I'm like, oh my God, these are babies. These are children. And I'm like, no, Chelsea, these are adults. These are legal adults. They're out here voting. And I'm like, no, these are babies. These are children. They need to be protected at all costs. And I'm just like, oh, is that how we looked? Is that where we were at?
It is wild.
I can imagine. So do you think this is a space that you like want to stay in, or do you think you're going to be one of those age range hopping authors who writes in both?
Oh no, I think I definitely am going to do both for a bit. had so much fun. Once I got out of that headspace of, this is an adult book, you can write it, I had so much fun writing it. I could not wait to work on another one. So I definitely have a lot of fun over in that space, but I feel like I still have stories to tell in the young adult space, in the children's space in general, because again, and it happens every time when I go to research books for an idea I have, a theme or something, there is still a massive lack of book by Black authors in those spaces. And that tells me that there is, you can imagine for every one author how many readers that encompasses. So if there's 10 of us in the game, then how many readers are we actually reaching? Because 10 of us are not going to tell the same story, but 10 of us also aren't going to reach all of those needs that those readers have. So that's a reason why I continue to want to stay in the children's space. It's just we're still lacking. And if me writing one book, whether it's good or absolute trash, opens the door for 5 more Black authors, 10 more Black authors, 15 more Black authors, then I will stay in that space until they kick me out, just so that we can continuously bring in new voices. I would be that Julian Winters novels suck. Here are 10 other Black, write that article about me, because I want you to have the ability to look at a variety of Black voices telling stories, rather than saying Julian Winters' novel sucks, and here are the other 5 Black authors that you can read. I'm tired of that.
No, I get that. And you don't understand how happy that makes my soul, my spirit to hear, because, like I said, I've talked to a lot of authors, both on screen and off screen, both indie, traditional, all walks, all journeys, right? And it's one of those things where in public, very vocally, we are all kind of have that energy of we have to open the door for each other, right? Yeah. But it's also sometimes like there are authors who don't feel that way, who are like, I must be the author that you read. I have to be the one, me. And so it's very nice and very refreshing to hear that, you're doing this out of a passion and a love to see stories like the ones that you want to see, but also it's not just about you. It's not just about your stories. And I think, I say this very broadly, very generalized, collectively as Black authors, I think there are a lot of places that we could go and a lot further that we could get if a lot of us adopted the mindset that you have, where it's just like, I'm going to keep writing these stories until they tell me they don't want them anymore, that I'm here to make space so that other people can help me take up this space. So because like you said, one author cannot be the only author that is expected to fill a void for hundreds of thousands of people, of readers for every single generation. Because I think it's also something worth mentioning that, we had our books of our generation growing up, and then, we're writing books for this generation that is coming up. But, there's always room. There's always going to be another generation behind them. And just like we didn't want to read the quote unquote old books, we wanted something new. We wanted something fresh. We wanted something that was for us, that was culturally relevant, or, whatever to us at that time. The generation after that is also going to want that. So it's like, if you can open the door, there will be space for more authors to come in and continue the stories. It's passing on the torch. It's standing on the shoulders of the people who came before you, right? And having that we rise together type of mentality. I did not mean to get on my soapbox, but if y'all know me, y'all know I'm about Black authors all day, every day. Black all the way to the spine, as I like to say.
I know I need to hear that. I need to hear more people, because like you said, there are people definitely who have their feet at the table and they ain't clearing out no other space. And it's so important for us to send out that message that, hey, that's not how it is. That's how it's always going to be. There are others who are, who got through the door and have their foot still in the door so that you can get in behind them, kind of thing. And I appreciate you saying that. Get on that soapbox, because it's not said enough how much we are here to support, like you said, the next generation and the ones after that.
I'm all about it, because the thing is, there are Black authors who did so much so that we could exist in this space in the first place. And there's still so much work that needs to be done so that hopefully, at least the way that I was raised, where I come from, the way my brain works, it's just like, I don't want the people who come after me to have to face the same struggles, problems, issues, obstacles that I had to face because I've already faced them. The goal is for you to get further because the path is clearer, you know?
Yeah, that is exactly it. We have it's just such a big thing for me. And I'm not going to get my soapbox, but that is like the biggest thing for me is I don't want to talk about the struggles that I went through someone else. I don't want to have to hear them say the same things I dealt with 10, 20 years ago, they are still dealing with now. I want to have taken on that struggle so that you can go forward without it. Whether you face a new struggle on the way there, okay. But I don't want you to have to relive all the old things that I went through, that my parents went through, that my parents went through. Like, we have to stop that cycle at some point. And especially in publishing, we got to stop that cycle of this person made it through and then no one else kind of thing, or that, instead of uplifting each other, we tore each other down because the mentality that was fed to us was there can be only one. So if you want it, you want to get rid of, everyone else on, to your left and your right kind of thing. And that's not the case. Mm-hmm. We can all go in linked arms through the same door. It's all good.
Exactly. See, I told you, I like you. So if y'all listening, y'all better go get his books because he about it. And that's what we're here for. We also have a question from the chat. So slight plug, if you're listening to this in the future, if you would like to be backstage during these conversations and ask your own questions of the authors, please make sure that you join our Patreon so that you can get the link to it. Go to patreon.com/Written In Melanin to join, and you'll be supporting the podcast, the YouTube channel, the Melanin Library, and all the creative things that we do to support Black authors. So that being said, you have a question from Ben who said, you have a level of security when it comes to your writing. Where and how did you establish this positive mindset? Because it's so refreshing.
Ben, I can tell you that level of security and confidence is fleeting. No, I think, and I don't know when it happened. I've had a lot of amazing editors along the way who have supported me, uplifted me, challenged me to go places that they could tell I wanted to go, but was shy about doing it. So, I will say I've gotten confidence. I've got confidence in readers who continuously message me and whatnot. But also, I think it's just because, and I don't want to spoil this because I know you're going to ask this question later on, but the advice I give to anyone in a creative space is love what you're doing first and foremost. Everyone else will, eventually start to love it because they can see the joy and the passion and the love that you pour into whatever creative thing you're doing. But if you don't love it first and foremost, ain't no one else gonna love it. And so I've kind of given myself the confidence of my first, second, third, whatever draft, it is solely for me. I just want to please me. I want to giggle with my feet ticking in the air. I want to swoon. I want to get emotional. I want to feel things. And then I will try to shape the story so that the reader can feel those things. But I think the confidence comes from, I just know that I'm writing stuff that I need and messages I need to be told, or, things I need to see happen because it didn't happen for me. And this is my chance. We're doing a little revisionist history here, but this is my chance to rewrite history for not only myself, but then to create a history for someone new coming into this, to this space. Not just as a writer, but as a reader too, where they know, oh, so I can get that too? Yes, 100%. You can get it, and you deserved it from the beginning, just in case no one told you.
There are so many good things in that. First of all, thank you for reading the long email. You don't know how much that makes my soul happy that you read the long email. You know that I'm going to ask you.
I love that email. Was the best thing ever. It was completely detailed. Came in not worried about nothing.
So, one, I appreciate that. But two, there's so many things here. I swear, if you're listening to this and you are an author, new author, established author, whatever, there's so many pieces of gold in this conversation because, Julian, you were talking about, just you loving your work. And I feel like, especially speaking when it comes to indie authors, because that's really what I know. That's the realm that I exist in. Mm-hmm. But it's just like, there's this moment where, you know, a lot of authors are like, well, how do I market my book? How do I get readers to love my book? And it's like, do you love your book? Are you happy with your book? Is this the book that if you were in Barnes and Noble and you saw it on a shelf, is this the book that you would pick up? Is this the cover that you want? Is this the writing that you want? Is this a story that you want to tell? Are you happy with it? And it's crazy that I feel like in this conversation, we've kind of kept coming back to that, but really that's what it's about. You have to love what you do so much, because there are definitely going to be ups and downs on this writing journey, and there are going to be wins. There are going to be some losses, some heavier than others. And you have to know that what you're writing is important, that it matters, and that it is what you want to do. Because I feel like when you get into the conversations of, I'm writing for this particular audience, or I'm writing this so this book can accomplish X, Y, and Z, and you're not writing it because it makes you laugh, because it gets you excited, it gets your blood racing, it makes you have fun. Once you get away from that, your readers also get away from that, because you can't put something into a book that you don't have yourself. And I love that you mentioned it, because, you know, you have a backlog. You are an author with a career, and it's not a small one. It's not, you know, you're not in some unknown author. And no shade to anybody. I know how that can sound. But, you know, but genuinely, like, unknown. You're giving this advice from someone who has, you know, 6, 7, 8 books on the way, who has done this, who has had a foot in this industry for a long enough time for it to be like, if it was going to spit you out, it has had time to do that. And it hasn't. It's like the space, this realm, this writing thing is your home, and you're still navigating your way through it, and you're still making space for other people. And it's just like that kind of genuine energy and just genuine joy for writing. I rock with that. I like it. I vibe with it. I'm here for it. But that being said, we are coming up on 45 minutes in this podcast. So we are going to start wrapping this up. So if you are backstage and you have any questions, now is your time to drop them in the chat so that we can try to get them covered. But before we go, and like you said, we've kind of touched on this, but I have 2 questions for you that I really do want to talk about. So Benjamin, if you're listening to this, I'm trying to keep it under an hour. Okay. Anyway, first one is, if you could choose what lasting effect your work would have on a reader, what would it be?
This one is easy. Goes back to what I said earlier. It goes back to what you said earlier as well. I grew up in the age, I think it's still happening in high school, I don't know, where I was assigned the classics in high school. And that is all we read. We didn't read outside of that. We didn't, dabble here and there. And so I was a very reluctant reader throughout my teen years, because reading those books, either A, we didn't exist in those books. We weren't in the pages. Black folks were not there. Queer folks were not there. They didn't. I don't know. I guess we were invented after the class. And B, if we were there, every time our storyline was nothing about pain. It was about struggle. It was about suffering. And we always died. We never made it to the end. So when I came into actually, deciding I'm going to be a published author, this is the journey I'm wanting to take, it is because the impact I want to leave on readers is we are so much more than our hurt, so much more than our pain, so much more than our struggles. And I hope the impact they take away is we deserve joy. We deserve love. We deserve to have a community that supports and uplifts us. And if you take nothing else from my books, if you hate everything else about it, please take away that these are things that you deserve, not things that you should have earned because you were a good person, because you were outstanding, because you embodied excellence. It's because you are who you are, and that's it.
Amen. Amen. You deserve good things because you are who you are, and that is it. Love does not have to be earned. There's something. Y'all better be picking up these gold nuggets. I'm telling you. We do have a question from the chat, which I'll ask before we get into our final question, which if you guys have been listening to the podcast, you already know what it is. So first one comes from KJ, and she asks, which one of your books would you like to be adapted?
I'm going to go with As You Walk On By. I was going to say Friends of the Palisades because I would love to see that. But I'm going to go with As You Walk On By because that cast is so diverse. But yet the topics that they talk about throughout that book, I think will hit with every generation. Whether it is teens now, whether it is adults now, whatever. I think the things that I discussed in that book are very impactful. And also it would be fun because it is the Breakfast Club meets Can't Hardly Wait. 5 kids lock themselves in a bedroom at a house party, like shenanigans galore. So I think it would be awesome.
Okay, I would be here for it. I would watch it. I would watch it personally, but I guess no one asked me, so it's fine. And the second question comes from Ash Writes Lots, and she asked, did publishing change your process of writing? And if so, how? And I'm going to have to put a time limit on this because we're coming up, so I got to wrap us up. So 5 minutes tops.
Yes. I thought I knew how to write a book until I got into publishing and realized I had no idea how to write a book. So yeah, it has changed my process quite a bit. There are things that I think about ahead of time. Like I was a low-key plotter back before my first book. I am a heavy plotter now, super detailed, just so I can understand things like beats and character arcs and all these different things that I didn't think about this book because I was just writing off of lives. Honestly, y'all, I was having a good time, and some things got wrapped up, some things didn't get wrapped up. Things I mentioned at the beginning never popped up in the end. So yes, it has changed the way I look at it. It also has changed in perspective of, I understand publishing is a business, and there are different things along the way that people do. And so I'm always thoughtful of when I'm drafting, when I'm whatever stage it is, how much work I'm putting on that next person to do, and how much can I take off of their plate? How much can I already know that, okay, this is going to happen. You got to make sure you do this, got to make sure you do that. So that next person's job is just a little bit easier because we're all in an industry that we love, but also an industry that can be very hard on you. So that part of my writing process has changed also. I'm a bit more thoughtful of, okay, let's make sure that we, clear this up and the grammar is good over here. And, this is over, I learned that lesson from that last book. Don't do it again. Stuff like that. Yes. Okay. I kept it under 5 minutes of that.
Yeah, you did. You did amazing. You're doing amazing. And I love this. I love this so much. But that does bring us to our final question, which is, what writing advice would you give to any new authors who are just now starting out on their author journey?
I said earlier in the podcast, I am going to repeat it because I think sometimes we need to hear things repeated before it actually sinks in. Love what you're writing first and foremost. Do not get into the trap that I will admit I've gotten into of writing a book to cater the audience, to cater the market. Don't try to write towards trends because by the time you get published, that trend will be over and we have moved on to something else. Don't do any of that. Write the story that has been living inside of you, no matter how weird you might think it is, how offbeat it may be, how it's either been done before, but it's never been done by you. So write that story first and foremost, especially because when you do get published, and you will get published, I'm manifesting for it right now for you, when you do get published, that process is so long that if you don't love the book, by the 200th time that you've had to read and edit and revise and fix stuff in it, you will hate that book when it gets published. So please love what you've written and go forth with that. That, again, will make the reader love the book. No matter how odd, strange, or whatever it may be, they're going to love it because they can feel your joy, your passion, your love in those words.
Can the church say amen? Because I have nothing to add to that. But yeah, no, truly, genuinely, you guys know I usually add something, but no, really, I stand 10 toes down on that hill. I will die on it. Yeah. I second everything that he has said. Love what you write and enjoy this journey because at the end of the day, it is your author journey and no one else can take it but you. And if you really love this, you're going to be on it for a while. So you might as well enjoy it, just put books on your shelf that you want to read. There's no point having an entire shelf dedicated to this is my book. And you're like, I would not actually read that book again if you paid me to. So right. But that is it. Julian, if you could please let the people know where to find you on the interwebs, I will take us out.
Yes, sure. I am award-winning author Julian Winters. I write contemporary novels featuring Black and queer characters that focus on falling in love, falling on your face, and falling in love with the journey that you're on while also celebrating who you are. You can find me on my website, julianwinters.com. You can also find me on Twitter. I will not call it that other name, at JulianW_Wright. And you can also find me on Instagram at WintersJulian.
All right, you guys, there you have it. As you know, there will be links in the show notes and or description box of wherever you are listening to this at. And that is it for this episode of the Written in Melanin podcast. If you'd like to support the podcast, then please share it with someone you think may enjoy it. Join the Patreon at patreon.com/written in melanin, or grab a copy of my books from my website, cmlockhart.com, or Resist Booksellers. There are links in the show notes for everything, and thank you guys again so much for listening. Until next time, I hope all your books are full of melanin.